What's cracking? It's your boy, it's your man, excuse me, your man Mike DZ. And this is a little something I came up with for Black History Month, being that we have entered Black History Month. So the subject of this presentation, or to some of y'all, this video, this presentation, like I said, the subject is Black cinema and from a world view. I hope you enjoy. It's understood that black people from America want their intelligent films shown in countries outside the United States. The reason why other countries, particularly Asia, do not watch black American cinema is because there's no audience. Stories about the achievements of black people in America are only important to black people and select people of other racial groups in America. You do not have large black American communities in various cities in India or Japan or even China. If you did, then you might have, if you did, then there might be black films and cinema houses in these countries. But because there are not enough blacks from America in these countries to be considered a community is why there are no black American films in the cinema houses of these countries. Yes, there are African immigrants in these countries, but the immigrants do not want to see their cultural films in cinema. African immigrants immigrate to other countries in Asia to make money to send home to their families in various different parts of the world, because those parts of the world where the families are at, there's not enough money to get by for the basics. Therefore, while from a black person from America's point of view, it might seem logical and an everyday thing that you would expect and someone from an African country to look at life the same way that you are looking at it, reality is that more than likely they're not looking at the problem the same way that you are. But does that less validate your issue with regard to black film being shown? No, it just means that the perspective from which you're thinking that other cultures would be looking at the situation from may not, and oftentimes is not the same way. Example, going off topic a little bit. When the film Straight Outta Compton came out, yes, it was advertised in Indian cinema houses. I know because I have an app on my phone for an Indian cinema house. And the reality is that Straight Outta Compton only lasted in India for about a week. It was not because the people of India have a prejudice against black people from America. No, more of to the point, people of India cannot necessarily relate to the struggles of black people from America, and unfortunately, there's not enough personal care to relate to it, which, speaking for the black/African descendant side of myself, I can understand where you're coming from, but that is the reality, at least from my small perspective. I cannot speak for all. I can only speak from my personal small perspective. Getting back to the story of black cinema from a world point of view, or from a world view. A reason blacks from America want other cultures to see black films is because, on a certain level, blacks want to be seen in a different light than the light select white people of America show blacks in, which is understandable. Select whites want the Eastern world to see blacks from America through the eyes of select whites who hate blacks. These select whites don't want the world to see blacks at their best, because to see blacks at their best is to show select whites at their worst, even if their worst is naturally them. Select whites naturally would prove to the world that select whites are crazy, which would cause the Eastern world to wonder if all whites of America are as bad as the select whites, which also is understandable. If you're looking at it from the outside looking in, it's understandable. If you have this certain group that's acting crazy, and I'm looking at your culture as a foreigner, I have to wonder if these five are crazy, are the rest of you like the five? Just a question. When other cultures say they don't like Americans, they're generally referring to select whites. When these other cultures see blacks from America, the other cultures relate blacks of America or from America to either white people, if from the United States, if the blacks happen to be wearing a U.S. flag on their clothing, or the cultures from other cultures of color see blacks as possibly African immigrants. There are few to none of other cultures that are really familiar with blacks from America outside of what select whites show. Let us take a look at Black Hollywood, a word I came up with. Let's take a look at Black Hollywood compared to Bollywood. When an Indian film is put out in India, the film is given roughly a month to be seen before it's pulled from the cinema. The reason is Bollywood puts out more than 1,000 films per year, whereas blacks from America struggle to get 2 films finished and put into cinema. It's not that black films are not good, more like black films are not relatable to select whites. The reason black films are not relatable to select whites is really because select whites don't care to expose themselves to black culture. Well, except when select whites want to appropriate black culture. Not trying to be ugly, but this is the real reason it's done. Taking one more break because this is being filmed on the day that happens to be Super Bowl, and we're aware that Justin Timberlake decided that he just had to make a tribute to Prince. The question is, would Prince and Flesh have agreed with Justin Timberlake's idea? If Prince was Flesh, would Prince even want to be on the same stage with Justin Timberlake today? A question. As a respecter of Prince's music, I'm highly inclined to believe that not only would Prince, not wish to be on stage with Timberlake, neither would James Brown, let alone Michael Jackson. Getting back to the subject, just felt a need to add those in. Because again, we're in Black History Month. These are black persons that are famous that select whites have either not cared for or have only cared for when select whites have found a way to manipulate black talent for select white advantage, unfortunately. Using a few non-cinema related people to make the point, Malcolm X was generally disliked by select whites while in Malcolm's flesh time. Or rather, in Malcolm's flesh time, when he was with the Nation of Islam, or the NOI, his words were, whites did not like his wording. Even though some of what NOI taught and teaches is false, with all due respect, it is. Much of what Malcolm spoke came from his own research. research of which select whites in Malcolm's day did not wish to hear because they did not want to deal with the truth of what Malcolm was speaking of. Malcolm X only became tolerable once Malcolm returned from Hajj and spoke differently about whites as being okay within the context of Islam. However, select whites took off took off what Malcolm said about whites within the context of Islam and just focused on Malcolm saying white people were okay, totally ignoring the context in which Malcolm was speaking, which is a disrespect of what the man's thoughts and feelings were and are. Very few to any whites were with Martin regarding nonviolent protests. But once Lyndon Johnson made civil rights a law, select whites reluctantly showed that they had sense to see black people as human equals, or humans as human beings and equals. Again, these are select whites because not all whites have seen this, but only when the word select is being used, it's to suggest that a great majority of whites saw it that way. The minority are those whites who have sense, which we know that within the boundaries of what's called the United States, majority of the United States is filled with select whites, unfortunately. And select whites clearly chose not to relate to blacks, which fueled their racist thinking in Malcolm and Martin's day, and we're only 18 years past civil rights, and you see how far majority of whites from America have grown on racism. Not much at all. You can understand and see why select whites feel they can't relate to black films. It's called choice. They choose not to relate. There is no physical force preventing select whites from relating to black people. Select whites simply choose not to care. This is why black films do not get the time in cinema they deserve. Select white people have done such a good job at not caring for relating to black films that they've convinced other cultures to believe their false white idea. Mind you, not all whites are this narrow-minded or sick. Just the majority, unfortunately. The white choice to not care is so bad that even some black people have this disease. When you meet black people or blacks who have nothing good to say about black cinema and can only see white cinema as great, you have met a poisoned black mind. Yes, I acknowledge, Mike Deasy acknowledges, I'm critical of black cinema, but that is because I seriously want black cinema to manifest the quality that Martin King spoke of. That, remember, when Martin Luther King spoke of the term wanting his people and his children particularly to be judged by their content of character, that is what I'm desiring and demanding of blacks who make film, blacks in any avenue of intelligent endeavor. I'm demanding that they produce the excellence that Dr. King was speaking of. Otherwise, whether you like it or not, you are disgracing the very reason that Martin King spoke the I Have a Dream speech altogether. I support the concept of black firsts, but only to an extent. A black first is equal to a recording artist's debut album. On the first album, you are raw and hungry, and you sound like it in your recording. When you have talent, you're talented, raw, and hungry, as opposed to just sounding raw and hungry, which means you don't really have talent. So. Now, on the sophomore album, you are not allowed to bring the same vibe as album 1 because you have experience. You are to stay hungry and raw, but show a degree of evolution in talent. The same goes for black film. You are talented, raw, and hungry in the first film, or you're simply raw and hungry. On the second film, you are expected to add your experience as a filmmaker to the new film. When you put out nearly the same piece of material as the last film, I have to question your concept of the word growth. The problem for myself, for Mike Deasy, with regard to black cinema, is that, for the most part, black filmmakers do not grow enough. Black directors do not want to take on controversial subjects that most blacks are desiring to see. Let's take, for example, the fact that we're in Black History Month. Black people from America do not need any more films about the subject of Malcolm X, Martin King, the Black Panthers, or other civil rights related persons. Why not do a film about Nat Turner, Maya Angelou, Beige Shabazz, Coretta King, Sojourner Truth, or even Harriet Tubman, from a very real perspective? Meaning, instead of telling this rose-petal version of what these famous blacks lived through, why not make the film as frighteningly real as the times they lived in? That is impressive. Or why not do another film in the vein of Hidden Figures? Tell the story raw and real, take the comedy out, show it exactly as it was in that time period, so that the teens and 20-year-olds of today understand what literally was going down in that time period, to make them think differently about race relations in America, so that they will not have a rose-petal false idea of what never was. To a degree, I agree with my former teacher, Minister Farrakhan. There are quite a few black celebrities with enough money that if they pooled some of their money collectively, they could fund the next historical Spike Lee joint. But if they did, this does mean Spike has to chill on name calling and getting an attitude. It also means Spike should not ask Hollywood to help out in the form of putting his film in mainstream cinemas, because these select whites already choose not to relate to black culture. Why give select whites in white Hollywood another piece of black art? Why cannot, again, these well-off blacks collectively create their own version of an AMC? If you have the money, again, not everyone has to give up all their finances. Collectively gather your money and go into business collectively. It can be done, if you really want it to be done. That's the question. How badly do you really want to be independent, successful, and separate but respected from whites? That is a question. Elijah Muhammad has a point when he says, not said, but says, do for self. In truth, black Hollywood really doesn't need Hollywood to survive. If black people really cared about black people as we say we do, then our well-off blacks would sponsor our new soldiers in film. But problem is, the fact that most black celebrities have not done this already shows how much individually black celebrities believe in the totally successful and independent Black Hollywood. In the end, do black people need other cultures to see black cinema? No. They don't need to see black cinema. They should have the human wisdom to investigate black cinema and see what the fuss about among black people about black cinema is all about. Perhaps if other cultures, other nations of color around the world were to experience black cinema without select white people's interference, perhaps other cultures of color would see, and other cultures of European descent would see the beauty of black culture for the beauty of our culture, for the beauty of our people for what it is.